Many of you might have heard of Georgia's voter suppression law, and this law was passed by white members of the GOP, and it will heavily impact Black voters in the state. And when you look at this, it has a lot of ridiculous things on here. I mean, this is really to turn off Black voters. This is really what it's for. It's to turn you off. And then they have an opportunity to win more elections because you won't like these rules they have in place now. You'll get discouraged and you won't want to vote. So, I mean, look, this has been the goal of these folks since Black people could vote. Ever since Black people could vote, from that point on, they have always been trying to figure out ways to disrupt that Black vote. So, this is just one more way. So you need photo ID just to vote by mail. That is absolutely ridiculous. Cuts time to request an absentee ballot. Now, from what I read, you could request an absentee ballot 6 months prior to the election day. Now it's less than 3 months. Reduces drop box access. Makes it a crime to give food and water to voters waiting in line. And we know no one waits longer in line to vote than Black people in America. Now, in white areas, they make sure they keep it flowing. But in Black areas, many of those people will be out there standing in line for hours. And it's done on purpose, by the way. It's always been done on purpose. Okay, shortens time frames for runoffs, pull authority from Secretary of State and gives power to legislature. So this is the new law. And they've been getting quite a bit of pushback. A lot of corporations are threatening not to do business in Georgia. Major League Baseball is threatening to pull out from Georgia and relocate. So, look, and this is the All-Star game that they have in July in Atlanta, and they are pulling out because of this law. So, as you can see, they really want to cause the biggest harm to people, um, Black people, just to put it out there. So, 1 week after it signed into law, Georgia's Republican led voting overhaul is facing backlash from a growing number of corporate voices, including several of the state's most prominent companies in Major League Baseball. Critics of the legislation say they will restrict voter access and disproportionately affect people of color, with President Biden slamming it as Jim Crow in 21st century. Well, who would know that better than Jim Crow Joe? In a Wednesday interview with ESPN, Biden said he would support Major League Baseball moving its All-Star game in July out of Atlanta. Tony Clark, executive director of the Major League Baseball Players Association, first raised the idea last week, and it's not without precedent. As ESPN noted, the NBA moved its 2017 All-Star game out of Charlotte after North Carolina enacted a bill limiting anti-discrimination protections. I think today's professional athletes are acting incredibly responsible, Biden said. I would strongly support them doing that. People look to them. They're leaders. No, athletes are not leaders. I don't agree with you, Jim Crow Joe, on that one. This is Jim Crow on steroids, what they're doing in Georgia and 40 other states. The 98-page bill enacts new restrictions on mail-in and weekend voting while expanding some voters' access in person early voting, and it has become a flashpoint in the national conversation over voting rights as more than 40 states consider bills that would raise barriers to voting. While many Republicans, including Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, says the legislation will help ensure election integrity, civil rights advocates said it disenfranchises voters of color. 3 groups have already filed lawsuits alleging that parts of the law are discriminatory and unconstitutional, and arguing that many of the changes disproportionately harm Black voters, as Georgia Public Broadcast reported. Dozens of companies have joined in the criticism in recent days, including several that have been facing possible boycotts by voter rights advocates for not speaking up more forcefully ahead of the bill's passage. Those include Delta Airlines and the Coca-Cola Company headquartered in Atlanta. Officials of those 2 companies said they had worked with elected officials from both parties to provide feedback during the legislation process and their voice opposition to measures that would restrict voting access, and said they would keep pushing to protect the right to vote locally and nationally. James Quincy, Coca-Cola CEO and chairman, expressed disappointment in the legislation outcome in a statement Thursday that said the company would continue to work with stakeholders to advocate for change. Our focus is now on supporting federal legislation that protect voter access and address voter suppression across the country, he said. We all have the duty to protect everyone's right to vote, and we will continue to stand up for what is right in Georgia and across the U.S. Delta CEO Ed Bastian called the final bill unacceptable, writing in a Wednesday memo to employees the entire rationale for this bill was based on a lie, that there was widespread voter fraud in Georgia in the 2020 election, a claim that has been repeatedly debunked. After having time to now fully understand all that the bill, all that's in the bill, coupled with discussions with leaders and employees in the Black community, it is evident that the bill includes provisions that will make it harder for many underrepresented voters, particularly Black voters, to exercise their constitutional right to elect their representatives. He said that is wrong. Georgia governor addressed the corporate backlash in a Wednesday interview with CNBC, saying the legislation would add more opportunities for people to vote on weekends and increase the number of drop boxes statewide. That's not what it said. And they said they wanted to decrease that, as the legislation require the county to have at least one. He also disputed the characterization of a widely panned portion of the bill that criminalizes passing food and drinks to voters waiting in line, saying the provision only applies within 150 feet of a polling location. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, that should make people feel better. You shouldn't have passed nothing like this in the first place. But you know what? I don't care. Um, what these people say, whatever they do, it is not going to improve things for Black voters. I do not vote. I think that it is counterproductive to vote in America if these elected officials are not going to do for the Black community. And they have already showed us that for many decades now. They get in office and they suddenly don't know who we are after they get the vote. And because of that, I don't feel they deserve or even entitled to our vote. But unfortunately, there are still many in the community that will go out and gladly vote for these representatives, these congressmen, these senators, local politicians that are doing absolutely nothing for you. And they're not doing anything. But you are trained and conditioned to believing that you need to vote. Even if you get nothing out of it, you still need to do it anyway. Well, I think you need to develop a better policy than that. But y'all, please tell me what you think. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell. And I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.